I first want to address the question, can conflict be positive? My answer is a resounding yes. David Osberger, in Caring Enough to Confront, writes this about conflict. Conflict is natural, normal, neutral, and sometimes even delightful. It can turn into painful or disastrous ends, but it doesn't need to. Conflict is neither good nor bad, right nor wrong. Conflict simply is. How we view, approach, and work through our differences does, to a large extent, determine our whole life pattern. So conflict is important. Willimon tells us in our text these benefits for conflict. First, he says that conflict indicates fire. It indicates passion or life in a church. Invested people are people who are willing to be conflicted with others. They are passionate about their opinions and their part in the activities. But that passion is also necessary to move churches forward. Another benefit to conflict is that it leads to creative solutions. If we have a passion and an interest and a discussion, even a conflict about something, we are more likely to find a creative solution to accomplish our purposes. And third, he says, it draws us into examination of our values and our positions, our faith, and it leads us to prayer and to the word to find solutions and find how to even navigate the conflict. So conflict is and can be very beneficial. Let's look at 3 scriptural examples of conflict. First, let's talk about the apostles. There was a conflict that arose about the widows, and the apostles came to a creative solution by including more leaders. They appointed deacons and resolved the conflict. James, the leader of the Jerusalem church, brought consensus to a whole body of people about bringing in the Gentiles. He brought unity and advanced the cause of the church. Third, Paul addresses conflict and division with teaching and instruction in 1 Corinthians 11. So we see that conflict in each one of those situations benefited the church and advanced the cause of the church. Willimon in our text also offers 5 suggestions to diffuse conflict and diffuse issues when conflict gets spread across the body. First, he says, make sure that you are giving and informing everyone of the facts. Next, he says, state the history of the conflict so everybody's up to speed. Everybody knows how we came to this conflict or this impasse. Third, he says you might refer it to a committee, or fourth, if it is already a committee that's in conflict, you may add to that committee other individuals who are not on one side or the other, who are mediators, who have an ability to creatively think and add more information and hopefully bring that committee to a resolution. And finally, fifth, he says, sometimes we must delay action. I think that that's important because delaying action provides several things. One, it allows tempers to cool when there's conflict. Also, it allows us an opportunity to pray and to seek in the Word what to do if there's a word conflict or a conflict about theological conflict. And it also allows us time to creatively search for other ideas. There are 3 broad types of conflict. The first one is intrapersonal conflict. And these are internal conflicts. These are conflicts that actually arise within one person. The pastor often has internal conflicts, and that is because they have more than one goal. They may have a goal of being popular with the people or having a good rapport with people, but that goal may be in conflict with another goal of addressing sin or bringing correction in the body and knowing that it's not going to go over well. So that's an intrapersonal conflict. A more common conflict that we see in the church, I believe, is interpersonal conflicts, well known as personality conflicts. We know that you get three people in a room and there's going to eventually be some difference of personality. So personality conflicts really aren't based upon fact, they're based on emotion and reaction to one another. The third kind of conflict is substantive, and that's actually about facts. When conflicts arise because two different sets of people believe that two different projects are important and there's not enough money for both of those projects. Those are fact-based conflicts. John Maxwell offers these solutions or these ideas about dealing with conflict. First, and this comes from the Maxwell Leadership Bible. First, he says, address it. Avoiding conflict or pretending that conflict is not occurring is a common problem in our churches. We can't ignore the elephant in the room. We have to deal with it, because when conflict is not dealt with, when we pretend that it is not existing, it festers, it grows, and it creates greater and greater problems. So it's important that we address the elephant in the room. Secondarily, we have to talk about the facts, and we have to talk about the variety of viewpoints and the reason that people are on separate sides of a conflict. Third, he advises, especially if the pastor or the leader is attempting to resolve conflicts between two opposing ideas or people, that they don't insert themselves personally in the conflict. And that's important because we need to rise above conflict and be mediators and be problem solution oriented people. We need not to take sides in conflicts when we can avoid that. And fourth, he says that we need to appeal to God and to the Word. Just like Willimon suggested, we need to wait and pray. Often if you wait and pray, God will help resolve conflicts. The last kind of conflict that I want to talk about is really often a mixture of all the three broad types. It is change. Change is, I believe, the most common source of conflict in the church. And change often involves internal conflict. It involves interpersonal conflicts and positions and opinions and personalities that don't like change. And it also often involves substantive conflicts. And those are conflicts of facts. How are we going to spend the money? How much is it going to cost? What color is the carpet going to be? Even theological conflicts are part of, is this important? How should we say this? So change is an element in the church that constantly causes conflict. But change is what moves the church forward. Change is a fact of life if you're going to have a growing church. So here are a few ways to think about dealing with change. Our text advises that we test out the response of the people. Maybe we're going to try that change in a smaller group before we implement it among everybody. Another idea is that we need to give ear to the resistors. We need to listen to the reasons that people are resisting change. Oftentimes, just the fact of listening to them and validating that they have reasons and valid concerns helps them move along in accepting change. Third, we should find supporters. If we can find early adopters, if we can find people who see the benefit and the value of that change, they will spread good news. They will spread support for that change. Another idea that wasn't mentioned in the book, but I think is vitally important, is that we keep everyone informed. When people feel like they are in the dark, they become more and more resistant to change. So if we can talk to people and keep them advised about the progress that we are making and give them heads up about changes as they are before they're going to occur, people can adjust to change. And finally, we need to always be thinking creatively. Often there are more than one way to accomplish something, and ways that we can accomplish far greater things and include ideas from a broad spectrum of people that will facilitate change. So I want to remind you, just as our text did, we need to remember that Paul calls us to the ministry of reconciliation. So when conflict occurs, and that's from 2 Corinthians 5:18, when conflict occurs, we can be the source of the resolution. We can be the one that brings people together and creates unity.